Think about the last time that you went on a vacation. Where did you go? Did you enjoy your trip? Well, in the past year or so, my family and I have been fortunate enough to travel to some amazing destinations like Mexico, the Bahamas, Alaska, and this summer we're going to Norway. These are some of the best pictures I took on my trip to Alaska. Look at that beautiful glacier. Well, if we don't cut our carbon emissions, beautiful wonders like glaciers will cease to exist. Think about going on a trip to some of these amazing European destinations, like sunny Nice, cosmopolitan Berlin, bustling Rome, or serene Corfu. Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but a single family's week-long trip to Europe emits almost 1 ton of carbon. That's right, 1 ton from 1 week. And 8% of the total world's climate emissions come from the travel industry. But we shouldn't stop traveling. After all, according to the University of Pittsburgh's Mind Body Center, traveling can reduce depression, increase positivity, and contribute to an increase in overall positive well-being. But I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the technical environmental benefits to not traveling. This is evident from the COVID-19 pandemic when the world shut down. According to NPR, a lack of tourists and beaches in Thailand led to an increase in turtle hatching. And quieter oceans allowed for whales to thrive, especially in Alaska's Glacier Bay. So, sustainable travel is the key to continuing to visit these amazing places while still protecting and preserving them for those to come. Aviation is horrible for the environment due to the fuel that planes consume and the gas that they then emit. According to the EPA, 10% of the total carbon emissions from the US come from the aviation industry. And almost 5% of the European continent's emissions come from aviation. So we need to find an environmentally friendly solution that can replace planes. And the answer would be trains. But can trains really replace planes? Well, it's not always possible to do this, but they can be replaced on many short routes and some inter-European routes. So let's take a look at two examples where we're going to compare flying versus taking the train. The first is Paris to London. The carbon impact of taking the train on this trip is around 15 kilograms of carbon dioxide per person, whereas per person taking the plane, it emits around 50 kilograms of carbon dioxide per person. And while regular levels of carbon dioxide are necessary for the health of our environment, increased levels of CO2 are horrible for the environment, and that's why we have to watch how much carbon we emit. Next, for price, it'll cost around $60 to take the train on this route, whereas it'll cost around $30 more at $90 to fly this route. Then, for time, it takes around 2 hours and 15 minutes to ride the train on this route, whereas it takes around an hour and 15 to fly this route. But this time gap shrinks when you factor in time to and from the airport, checking luggage, and going through security. So really, the train wins, as you win on price, climate impact, and there's no difference in time. Now let's compare a trip from Berlin to Amsterdam, two more European cities. The climate impact of taking the train on this route is only 18 kilograms of carbon dioxide emitted, whereas it emits around 78 kilograms of CO2 to fly on this route. So that is a big difference, and the train does win on carbon emissions. Then for price, it costs around $90 to train this route and around $125 to fly this route. So the train is also winning on price. But where the train doesn't win is time, as it takes slightly over 5 hours to take the train on this route, whereas it takes less than an hour and a half to fly. Like I said earlier, I don't want you to stop traveling, and wasting nearly 4 hours of your time on a train ride would be wasting travel time. So, trains don't always beat planes. But what if trains can't reasonably be used? Well, enter sustainable aviation fuel, also known as SAF. SAF, unlike traditional aviation fuel, is not made with fossil fuels. And this is important because it can reduce the carbon emissions from flights by up to 90%, 90. Right now, the most promising SAF available is cooking oil, and the UK's flag carrier Virgin Atlantic recently operated the first fully SAF-powered flight on their Virgin 100 flight in December of last year from London to New York. And this flight was powered off of cooking oil. Unfortunately, though, for this industry, SAF is a longer-term solution, and the reason for that is twofold. The first is that SAF is simply more expensive than traditional aviation fuel, often costing upwards of 3 times more than your average alternative. And also, most airports don't even have the infrastructure to support SAF fueling. This means that along with maintaining and operating their current fueling stations, airports will need to build and run new fueling stations just to fuel planes powered off of SAF. Now let's pivot and talk about the cruise industry. Cruising is a great way to travel, and it's really popular with 31.5 million people taking a cruise vacation in the year 2023. But while this type of trip is fun, it is horrible for the environment, with one cruise ship emitting the same amount of carbon dioxide as 12,000 cars do in a year. 12,000. That said, most major cruise lines aim to halve their carbon emissions by the year 2030 and cut them out entirely by 2050. So let's see how they're doing this. The first long-term solution for this industry is shore-based power, which is like imagine plugging in a huge computer charger into an equally as large vessel. The problem with this is that it requires a mass infrastructure development, as right now only 14 passenger ports offer the capability to literally plug in a cruise ship. If you were to ask me what cruise lines are good for the environment, my answer would be Hurtigruten and National Geographic's Lindblad Cruises. Hurtigruten is a Norwegian-based cruise line that operates some amazing cruises all around Norway and the world. And this line is expected to receive its first completely carbon-neutral vessel by the year 2030. That's less than 6 years away. And National Geographic's Lindblad Cruises offers some amazing expedition tours around different islands and regions of this world. And that cruise line is fully carbon neutral. Now I want to pivot and talk about liquefied natural gas. LNG, liquefied natural gas, can reduce cruise ship emissions by around 20% less than ones powered off of oil and around 40% less than cruise ships powered off of coal. And this solution is available right now, and many cruise lines are using it. Two boats, the MSC World Europa and the Royal Caribbean Icon of the Seas, which are pictured there, are relatively new vessels that are both powered solely off of LNG. The problem with LNG is that it's made up of methane. And for the environment, methane is 80 times worse than carbon dioxide over a 20-year period. And these tanks can leak this methane, which harms the environment. But there are solutions being developed, such as collection tanks that can slow and even stop methane from leaking from LNG tanks. Right now, LNG is a sort of band-aid. It doesn't fully cure the cruise industry's problem with the environment, but it's a great step in the right direction. The real solutions for the cruise industry are hydrogen power and biofuel. Hydrogen power, in short, works by reacting hydrogen and oxygen in a fuel cell to generate electricity and heat, with the only byproduct being water vapor, which is completely fine for the environment. Then biofuel takes biomass such as wood, algae, crops, waste, and even the methane from landfills and converts those into environmentally friendly fuels. So, are any cruise lines using these solutions? Well, Viking Cruises has a boat called the Viking Neptune that uses hydrogen power to partially power that boat, and it has a great impact in reducing that vessel's carbon emissions. Then, Virgin Voyages is implementing biofuel solutions on their vessels, such as cooking oil. And in case you were wondering, Virgin Voyages is owned by the same parent company, the Virgin Group, as Virgin Atlantic, the airline using cooking oil to power its jets. So, many of you in the audience today are teenagers, and you may be thinking, well, what can I do about this? But remember, you hold the power to influence the future, and the choices that you make have consequences, some good and some bad. So as you're traveling through this world that's both vast and vulnerable, make sure to make the choices that help the environment instead of hurt it. Let's travel not just to see the world, but to save it. Thank you.